beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. O beautiful for pilgrims' feet whose stern impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. America, America, God mend thine every flaw. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. O beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. O beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you, Ken Shepler and Chelsea Spaeth. Good evening and welcome, students, faculty, alumni, trustees, sisters, benefactors, friends, and guests. Welcome to this special opportunity to listen to and meet humanitarian, author, human rights advocate, and Holocaust survivor, Gerda Weissman Klein. On the back of your program, you'll find a description of the D.B. Reinhart Institute for Ethics and Leadership and its mission statement. Our strategic goal for the Institute is to achieve national recognition. Speakers of the caliber of Elie Wiesel, Immaculata Ilibagiza, Greg Mortensen, Mitch Albom, Richard Louv, and this return engagement of Gerda Weissman Klein lead to such distinction, as do the Institute's partnerships with Holocaust educators, the Summer Symposia of Scholars, and the research and publications of the Reinhart Fellows. This institute is indeed a gift to the university and to our community, and we thank our benefactors, especially the Reinhart family, for enabling such programs to be possible for our students and for this region. The university is also grateful to the staff who plan such endeavors as this, especially Dr. Rick Kite, members of the Ethics Advisory Board, Darrell Klott, and to the staff in the Fine Arts Center. There will be a reception and book signing in the lobby immediately following tonight's presentation. Darrell Klott, a member of the Viterbo faculty and recipient of the 2011 Ellis Island Medal of Honor, will now introduce her very close friend. Please join me in thanking Darrell for her many contributions to the university and to the field of Holocaust studies. Darrell Klott.
Good evening. Good evening. Before I begin, we want to tell you that we're very happy that this evening's presentation will be rebroadcast on Channel 8 WKBT Saturday night, this Saturday night, October 22nd at 11:35 p.m. We don't expect you to stay up that late, but set your recording devices and then you can share it with loved ones. I am Darrell Klott, and I have the best job on the face of the earth because I am a teacher. And I'm also happy to tell you that I am a Holocaust educator. Gerda Weissman Klein graced this very stage February 6, 2006, nearly 6 years ago. Before she came the first time, I had been dreaming of bringing her to our area for 5 years before it became reality. Never in my wildest imaginings did I dare think that she would ever come back. It wouldn't have happened if Marv and I had not gone to the Rose Bowl January 1st in Pasadena, California, and then we decided to take a road trip for a few days afterwards. And one of our stops was going to be where Gerda lives, in Scottsdale, Arizona. Well, I almost had a heart attack when I called her and she invited us to come to her home for breakfast. And she scrambled eggs for us in her bare feet. And she told us that she wanted to come back to Viterbo to address the lacrosse community again. We spent 4.5 hours with Gerda in her home that day, and we got a peek into her life and into her many awards, which are truly treasures. I have read about many of Gerda's honors, but I was not prepared for the multitude. Gerda is one of the most humble people that I know, but she cannot hide the hundreds of honors which are in her home, including the Academy Award that she won in 1996 for the documentary One Survivor Remembers. Gerda shared with us her greatest treasure. It is an exquisite wall hanging that her mother spent 5 years making for her mother's brother as a wedding gift. And her uncle, this brother lived in Turkey. Her parents were both killed at Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp, and when Gerda got married, her uncle sent her that wall hanging, that beautiful needlepoint, as a wedding gift. Besides being a work of art, it is one of the few things that she has remaining from her family. I want to thank the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration for praying for the last 8 months that Gerda would remain healthy and be able to come to us tonight. Yeah. It worked. Perhaps some of you in this audience don't know that the sisters and the local prayer partners have been praying around the clock since 1878 for 133 years for prayer requests which come in from around the world. Yes, yes. Gerda has given me permission to tell you that she is 87 years young. She recently had a knee replacement 8 weeks ago, and she then received a pacemaker. Yet, this remarkable woman has chosen to travel to La Crosse, Wisconsin to speak to us tonight. She could be home sitting in a rocking chair reading really good books. But she's chosen to fly halfway across the country to be with us tonight to share her message so we can hear firsthand what happens when people do not accept other people's differences. She has a very special person with her tonight, Her granddaughter, Alyssa, has traveled with her and managed her speaking engagements and her business affairs for the past 6 years. I must tell you that the very last time that Gerda traveled alone was her time in La Crosse, February of 2006. And when Marv and I took her to the airport and watched her go through security all by herself, I just wanted to say, don't make her take her shoes off. She's a celebrity. But of course, that didn't work. Gerda is devoting the rest of her life to her latest program called Citizenship Counts, which she and Alyssa co-founded in 2008. It's designed to promote patriotism in today's youth and to, along with that, a greater appreciation for the privilege and the responsibility of citizenship. Alyssa, will you please stand up? Oh, great. We've been able to spend the last couple days with her, and she's truly a beautiful young woman. Gerda Weissman Klein is one of my heroines. She had a comfortable and happy childhood in a town in southern Poland until German soldiers invaded in September of 1939 when Gerda was 15 years old. Within a few months, her beloved brother Arthur was taken away by the Nazis, and Gerda and her parents were forced to move to ghetto quarters. In 1942, Gerda was separated from her parents and sent to forced labor camps. 3 years later, when her final camp was evacuated, 2,000 female prisoners were led on a 3-month death march in the dead of winter, ending in the Czech town of Valery. Weighing 68 pounds, Gerda was one of 120 survivors. When the war ended, Gerda found out that her entire family had been killed. Among the Americans who liberated the survivors was a young Jewish lieutenant named Kurt. He visited Gerda frequently while she was convalescing at the field hospital that had been set up in Valery. And when Kurt's tour of duty ended in September 1945, he asked Gerda to be his bride. Kurt and Gerda Klein were married for 56 years. Soon after they settled in Buffalo, New York, Gerda began to speak about her experiences during the Holocaust. She has lectured throughout the world, and she has written 9 books, including All But My Life, which is my very favorite Holocaust memoir. It has been in print for 53 years, and it is in 62 editions. It's taught in high schools and college classrooms across the world. Through this book, Gerda has taught me a very valuable lesson, which I in turn have passed on to my students, and that is that we need to be thankful for what we have, rather than feeling badly and complaining about what we don't have. A film that features her story is shown regularly at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., and she's appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show, CBS Sunday Morning. She was featured on 60 Minutes and Nightline and various other TV shows. On January 27th, 2006, she was chosen from all the Holocaust survivors in the world to address the UN on the very first International Holocaust Day. On February 15th, 2011, Gerda received her most recent and her most splendid honor. She received the Medal of Freedom from President Obama in the White House. There were there were 14 other individuals that received this, and you may recognize a few of these names. How about George Bush Sr., sports great Stan Musial, investor and philanthropist Warren Buffett, cellist Yo-Yo Ma, and the great poet Maya Angelou. She was in very good company. Imagine coming to the United States in 1946, not speaking a word of English, and only knowing one person, her husband Kurt, and 65 years later, receiving the nation's highest civilian honor. Not bad. For years, Gerda Weissman Klein has been speaking to communities and students across the nation about the horrors that she survived during the Holocaust. She could have responded with anger and hatred, but instead she responded with extraordinary compassion for humanity. History is about to come alive for us. It is my privilege to introduce my friend, Gerda Weissman Klein.
At moments such as this one, of course, I realize how inadequate any words of thank you can be. Daryl, it is you who should be getting the recognition and applause for what you have done, for what you have taught generations I shall not see about the importance of tolerance, of love, and of caring. You have been carrying that torch. I have had the privilege of meeting some of your students and fellow teachers this afternoon, and have seen their great esteem, their admiration for all that you have done. On behalf of all those who cannot speak for themselves, please do accept my most heartfelt gratitude. President Artman, I don't know where you are, sir. I feel humbled and grateful and honored to be standing in this institution, which stands for all the noble things in this world. I'm fully aware how grateful I should and how I am that you are giving me this opportunity to address this incredible audience. My gratitude also to Mr. Kite, I don't know where you are, Rick, for being constantly with us since the moment I came, and together with my dear friend Daryl, making Alyssa and me so tremendously welcome. Dear friends, I wish that somehow I could convey to you what I feel in this moment when the past and the present come into almost shocking proximity. This afternoon, when I had the privilege of meeting with some of your friends and fellow teachers, a question was asked, and I feel that perhaps I should illuminate its answer right now. The question was, how do you reconcile the two worlds in which you have lived? And what came to my mind is something I should like to share with you. It is almost like, and seeing the beautiful river here, illuminated by the late afternoon sun, with its late autumn leaves swaying gently in the wind, I thought about my own life. I'm in the late autumn of my life. I'm 87 years old. And in a way, I felt it if I gently was canoeing on that river, looking at the shores inhabited by people I know and love. This has been my life since I came to this beloved country more than 60 years ago. But below the surface of the river, just like below in the ocean where the Titanic rests, is another world, a world frozen in time, a world I knew and was a part of, a world in which I was a little girl playing with my dolls, where my parents, where my brother were, a world in which I went to school and laughed and cried and spoke a language I no longer speak. And somehow it seems that every so often I want to reach down to this cold world and retrieve those whom I love and lost and tell their story. So this is the answer to the question of this afternoon. How do you reconcile your two worlds? Perhaps the best way to do it is to illuminate the world in which I now live, the world of undreamt of freedom, the world which this beloved country has given me. I love this country with a love that only one who has been homeless and hungry for as long as I have been can understand. Let me reach back then to the day when my world changed. September 3rd, 1939. I was 15 years old. It was a beautiful, sunny autumn day, when it seemed like the tsunami, when a wave of hatred rose over Europe and swept away my beloved parents, my only brother, my childhood home. The life I knew and loved was gone forever. I know, of course, that you are well informed, that you have read and seen a great deal of World War II's stories. You have heard so many stories of the Holocaust. No matter what you heard, no matter how unbelievable, it all was true. But what I believe has never been somehow sufficiently brought to the light, and that is that there, in this seeming unrelieved darkness and horror, there lived a dimension which gave one hope, and that is the love, the sharing, the caring, and friendship. When I was taken away from my family, there was one friend with me. Those of you who are familiar with my books will recognize her. Her name was Ilse. Ilse was a childhood friend of mine. Or rather, I should say, I have known her for as long as I can remember, for the simple reason that our mothers were close friends. And what mothers usually do, well-meaning, they felt we should be friends as well. It didn't work. For a very simple reason. I didn't like her. She was an absolutely wonderful girl. However, my mother always told me, why can't you be more like Ilse? She played the piano exquisitely. Her manners were impeccable. She was always so neat. And obviously, I never wanted to play with that paragon of all virtue. But whenever we were together without our mothers, we always had a wonderful time. In the camps, we became sisters to each other. Ilse left me many memories, and the memories of two incredible gifts. One day in a factory in which we worked, she found a single raspberry in the gutter. She carried it in her pocket all day long, against God knows only what temptation, to present it to me that night on a leaf which she plucked through the barbed wire. Can you conceive of a world in which one slightly bruised, dust-covered raspberry becomes your entire possession, and you give this treasure to a friend? Tragically, she never tasted another raspberry again. Ilse died in my arms on a wet meadow in Czechoslovakia. She was 18 years old. Let me give you the progression of it. When the war came, I was 15 in 1939. I went to the camps in 1942. I was in the camps with Ilse for a little more than 3 years. in January of 1945, as the American, the British, and Russian forces were crushing Germany to her ultimate defeat, our orders were to be shipped to Oranienburg, obviously for the final solution. Oranienburg was a murder camp near Berlin, such as Auschwitz was in Poland. Blessedly, Oranienburg fell into the hands of the Allies, and we started the march, which is known in history books simply as the Death March. Ours wasn't the only, there were numerous marches throughout Germany at that time. We started on the 29th of January 1945. We covered about 350 miles in a little more than 4 months, and were liberated on May 7th, 1945. My friend Ilse died on the 29th of January. In the last bitter hour of her young, unfulfilled life, she revealed the greatness of her humanity. She said she was angry at no one, and she hoped that no one was angry at her. And then she said, if my parents and Kitty was her little sister, if they survived, don't tell them how I died. They didn't survive. And lastly, she asked me to promise her to go on for 1 more week. A week in those days was a very long time. A week later, exactly to the day, perhaps to the very hour of her death, we were liberated by American forces. I'd like to share with you the story of my liberation. Our march came to a halt in a small, obscure village in Czechoslovakia called Volary. We heard American planes overhead and shooting of American artillery close by. But our captors decided, for reasons pretty obvious, so that we should not be witnesses to their deeds, they locked us into an abandoned bicycle factory and attached a time bomb. I'm fully aware it sounds like a cheap thriller. I remember that night very clearly. I remember our timid hopes and our prayers. We have come so far. 6 long, incredible years. Are we not going to see the joy of freedom? Suddenly it started to rain. A torrential rain so common in the spring. A rain which resulted in mud preventing the bomb and timer from connecting. And obviously it never went off. At dawn, the doors were thrust open. We heard shouts in Czech, if anyone is there, get out. The war in Europe was over. What do you feel in such a moment? A moment you have prayed for 6 seemingly endless years. I recall no feeling at all. I don't know if I was too ill to distinguish a dream from reality, or if God in His providential wisdom creates an emotional vacuum in such a moment. I remember standing in the doorway of that factory, trying to absorb the wonder of freedom. Suddenly I saw a strange vehicle coming down a gentle hill. Its colors no longer green, thank God. On its hood no longer the despised swastika, but the white star of the American army. 2 men in strange uniforms settled that vehicle. One jumped out, came toward where I stood. I looked at him in awe, in disbelief. But of course I knew what I had to do, namely to identify who we were. I looked at him and I said in a small and frightened voice, We are Jewish, you know. For a long time, he didn't seem to answer me. And finally, his own voice betrayed his emotion as he said, "So am I." And then he asked an incredible question. He asked if he could see the other ladies, a form of a dress obviously unknown to us. I told him that most of the girls were inside, they were too ill to walk. He asked me to come with him. And by doing so, did something which at first I didn't understand. And when I understood it, I could not believe it. He simply held the door open for me and let me precede him. And in that simple, eloquent gesture, he restored me to humanity again. I should like to give you a picture of that moment. I weighed 68 pounds. My hair was gray. I was in rags. I had not had a bath in 3 years. And here was this very handsome young American officer holding the door open for me. By what miracle could I have foreseen that I'll marry him a year later in Paris, and he will bring me home to this beloved country? I'm fully aware of what has been given to me. My imagination could not have reached that far. Not further than I'll be a wife, a mother, in what to me was the most beautiful city in the world, not Paris or London or New York, but Buffalo, New York. Buffalo became my home. It was there that fear changed into cautious security, sadness into joy, and finally death into life when our 3 children were born. Buffalo will always be my home, even though I live now in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. Mrs. Cloud has been kind enough to tell you of the so-called accomplishments of mine, and I wish to assure you that there really are not many. I think of myself of a simple woman, deeply in love with my beloved husband, whom I lost 10 years ago. A mother of 3 children, a grandmother, and now great-grandmother. One with the hope of becoming a writer, knowing that English being my 3rd language and having no education to speak of, no formal education, I will not attain it. But everything is possible in this beloved country of ours. I have never been asked what kind of degrees I have had. I have only been asked, show me what you have written and what you can do. This is America. When I have been asked, why did you go on when the odds have been so horrible against me? I can tell you because, in a way, I'm a dreamer. I was always dreaming either of the past, of my happy childhood, or this future in which I'm going to be free. I have been very lucky. So my future and its reality has exceeded every dream. I have not been Mother Teresa. I did not spend my life in the things of Calcutta, caring for the poorest of the poor. I have not discovered any cure to any dread disease. I have not been wealthy to be able to endow universities for great things. And I've asked my question, why? Why was I called to the White House and have our president put this incredible medal around my neck? Why? I have done only one thing I wanted to do, and that is to pay back this country for what they have done for me and for each and every one of you whose ancestors came for the same reason, for a life of freedom, for a better life for our children, for education, for possibilities, for undreamt of greatness. So, I've had the privilege to work for many dear causes, lung and heart, mental retardation, autism. All the things which I know in a way from my own experience, having myself been imprisoned within myself without being able to reach out and saying what I wanted to say and to convey, as are children who are autistic or children who are retarded and cannot explain. Having been, so to speak, on both sides of the tracks, I felt it was my obligation to speak on their behalf. But above all, I felt it is my sacred duty to devote the rest of my life, whatever there is, to tell our children and our grandchildren of the greatness of our beloved country. And this is where my granddaughter, who came to me more than 7 years ago, giving up her own career as a published writer and working on Citizenship Counts to instruct and teach all our children of what America is all about. Just a few weeks ago, our country was able to have 2 of our hostages released from Iran, where they simply walked across the border. Just think about it. All the embassies around the world, American embassies, have been working for 2 years, spending millions of dollars for the life of 2 Americans to bring them back home. What other country in the world will do it? We must also teach our children, so unfortunately we still have hunger and want in our country, that you can sit down today and write a check for the tragedy in Haiti and take it off your income tax. To take it off your income tax of the money which you have earned here, to give charity to others. No country in the world has done what our country has done. No country in the world has sent Doctors Without Borders to help restore the health of children around the world. And you yourself told me that you and your husband went to China last year to teach children. We must instill in our children the pride of what America is all about. It has been my dream to take the kids to the beaches of Normandy, to see the thousands upon thousands of graves of all your relatives and mine who gave their life, that I can stand here without fear that the Gestapo will pull me away. Go take your children to Pearl Harbor and see the oil slick which still comes from the Arizona. This is our country. Its nobility. I love it with all my heart. For no country in this world could have given this freedom to all of us. And I am in awe as I stood at the White House, as I stood when I received my Oscar in Los Angeles. I, a Holocaust survivor. My thoughts were far away. My thoughts were on the death march, when I stood in a seemingly never-ending line, holding a battered, rusty bowl in my hand, and praying that when I got to the start of the line, there should be enough food left in the kettle. And if by some miracle the ladle went deeper and brought forth a potato, I was a winner. I don't want a potato to be more valuable than an Oscar. But I don't want to see an Oscar to be so valuable that we are not realizing that others do not have a potato. Please do remember that tonight 35 million Americans are going to bed hungry. That's right. 35 million. And millions of people all over the world. We can and we will, and our young people will do something about it. I had the privilege of speaking to over 1,000 young people this morning, and I'm deeply impressed by their understanding and caring and willingness to be proud of their heritage and to do something for the entire world, and above all, to educate themselves, and rather to do it standing, as I mentioned to them, on the threshold of adulthood. I told them that whatever profession they're going to choose, do the best you can. If you're going to be a baker, bake the crustiest, best bread. If you're going to be a doctor, heal not only the body, but the soul as well. But I have hoped and prayed that many will espouse what to me is the greatest profession of them all, and that is to be a teacher. And to the teachers here among you, my undying gratitude in the darkness of slavery, without direction, without anyone to look up to. I harked back to what my parents and my teachers told me. I thought as a child that I didn't pay too much attention, but I must have paid some attention because it lodged in my mind. They became my lodestar. I know that your noble profession is often wrought with difficulties. I know that there are great frustrations, but I want to remind you that perhaps on such a day when we were really quite upset and came home and said, "Oh my God, I've tried so hard," perhaps on that day you have touched a spark in someone's heart which will result in greatness. I love to work with kids. I recall, and perhaps this is something of importance that I should share, that when the tragedy occurred at Columbine, the principal there, Frank Solis, called my husband and me and asked if we would come. Because I don't know if it's used in your high schools, but in many high schools across the country, they are using my book, All But My Life. So the children were familiar with my story. And unfortunately, they were saying that no adult, no teacher, no guidance counselor, no parent can understand their trauma. Only someone of their age. I was of their age. And as you might remember, that it occurred in honor of Hitler's birthday on the 21st of April. To think that here in America, among the mountains of Colorado, 2 disturbed boys will plan for an entire year to kill their friends and their teachers in honor of Hitler. I went to Columbine. I've gone back to Columbine almost every year since. This year, it's going to be 12 years. The children who were then in kindergarten are going to graduate. Columbine still has some scars. But the young people there have shown their mettle by being incredible. They used to ask me, am I ever going to forget? Am I ever going to laugh again? I told them, you are not going to forget. But the memory will lodge within you, not like a heavy stone, but like a light which will be dim most of the time. But when you encounter injustice, you will be able to speak up, and that light will warm your being with having been a witness and having been able to help. And I'm proud to be able to tell you that when September 11th happens, many of the young people of Columbine went to New York and to Washington to share with their contemporaries what they have known and how they could help them. There's so much I still would like to share with you, but I see that my time is running out. So I'd like to share with you what for me was probably one of the most moving and most difficult moments of my life. And that was when I had the incredible privilege of addressing the United Nations. I was shattered to my very depths. How can one person, how can anyone in any language speak on behalf of millions who have been deprived of freedom? Not just the Holocaust, but freedom everywhere in the world, which unfortunately the world is still not free in so many places where we are trying to help. As it happens, coincidentally, it was 2 days apart from the day on which I started on the death march, the 29th of January. And I stood there and remembered the seemingly never-ending lines of us shivering in the cold, of the snow falling, of the SS lifting up their whips and saying, "Forward march." We were like the snowflakes, each in their own right different. Most of them fell to the earth, resulted into slush and mud. And on me, a snowflake landed and made me live. And I have asked the question ever since, why am I here? I am no better. What then is my responsibility? But to tell their stories, at least the stories that I knew who never had the chance to sit down to dinner with the family, to hold a child in their arms, to walk in the rain with a friend. And I stood there and begged. I begged. For I remember I was still in Europe when I saw the beloved late Mrs. Roosevelt holding the Declaration in her arms of human rights and saying, "Now with the United Nations, there never will be another war." So I did stay and begged that this building built for the freedom of all should become an edifice in which it finally is going to be implemented, so that every child of every race, of every color, of every religion should be able to look up to the sky and dream the dreams of freedom. Our freedom. The freedom of our beloved country. The freedom which you, most of you, have taken as your birthright. This is my last hurrah. Citizenship counts. My beloved granddaughter, as I mentioned, is here. If you will want to know more about what we are doing, I'm sure that she will be happy to tell you. Or you can find it on www.citizenshipcounts.org. To build a world of pride in our beloved country, a world of love of which the poets have sung. But if I may, perhaps do something now. Do you think it is the time? My beloved husband used to say that coincidence is God's way of remaining unanimous. A coincidence happened last night in the lovely home of my hosts, Mr. and Mrs. Klatt, where she had prepared a dinner worthy to entertain the Queen of England, and I'm sorry the Queen did not come. But making it so special, and with so many special people, you have had someone come to help to tidy the kitchen. A young woman by the name of Bianca. Pardon? Bianca. Yes, Bianca. She came with an incredible grin on her face. It's my accent, you know. For this was one of the great days of her life. The day in which she had gotten the green card the entry to heaven, to become an American citizen. She was an orphan in Guatemala. When I believe the sisters, the Franciscan sisters, and incidentally I went to Notre Dame myself, so I have much in common with her, were able to bring her here as an orphan. She has lived here for 11 years. She has never been able to go back to the grave of her grandmother who sent her here for a better life. She came last night with a treasure in her pocket and in her heart. May I call upon her? Bianca. Where is she? Bianca, come here. Bianca. I would like you to tell, from both of us, what you said when we asked you, how does it feel to become an American? What did you say?
In the beginning, when I come to this country, I feel like a little candy with a lot of dreams and goals, but I had a lot of problems to get out to get a better life. But last night, my professor invited me to go into her house, and I don't know, for some reason, my green card arrived. And I was like, in shock. What did this happen, you know? And I share with them, and I say, before, I feel like a bird in a cage. You know, I can fly around, but I'm not able to get out of my cage. But now with this green card, my door is open, and now I can fly wherever I want to go. And I feel so free. And it's ask and thank you to all the sisters from Franciscans who helped me to achieve this goal. I came with no English, and now I can talk to you in front today. Thank you, Letty, because she's always part of my life too. Sister Ladonna, you know, you helped me a lot to achieve this until this moment, and all my teachers and WTC and my professors at Viterbo too. Thank you so much for accomplishing today my dream.
As she said, the door of the cage is open. And those of us who have known slavery know what that means. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Gerda. Alyssa, would you come over here too? Yes, please.
May I, as a proud grandmother, introduce my eldest granddaughter, Alyssa Oman, who is the head of Citizenship Counts, besides being my beloved granddaughter.
And Gerda, I have a little bit of a gift for you in appreciation for your visit here. This morning we had a photographer, David Marcoux, came and took some photos when Gerda Klein came to speak to middle school and high school students. And just outside of the Fine Arts Center here, took a picture of Gerda with Daryl and her granddaughter Alyssa. And I would just like to present these photos of the three of them. We have a reception now in the Fine Arts Center lobby. We have some books for sale, and Gerda has agreed to stay and answer any questions you might have and sign some books. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.